Hello guys, and welcome back to another cold episode. On today's episode, I am going to be discussing the best hand traps for Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel. Not specifically for the TCG. Well, yes, they are different, because in TCG you can like side deck things, but more specifically for best of ones, for Master Duel, and the like. Now granted, notably, I believe Maxi is not on here. Now obviously, we all know Maxi would go in S+. Plus. It's literally a meta-defining card. I don't think I need to discuss this. So, there you go. Now, granted, this obviously was made for the TCG and stuff like that, and I'm not going to know all of the effects, and in fact, some of them are really bad and just don't even deserve a point of recognition, so we're just not going to talk about most of these, but there are some that I'm going to bring up, and I need to, of course, have a situational here. Because there are some that are just situational. But yeah, basically, pretty standard tier list. SAB, situational, and F. Let's move on. Starting off with Gamma. Now, notably, Gamma currently is at 2 in Master Duel, however, is at 1 in the TCG and stuff like that. But we're just talking about the pure power, or the actual, like, power level of the card itself. Yeah, this card is absolutely insane. It's pretty easy to get its activation condition available, and it's really good for going first. Being able to stop an opponent's hand trap that would try and stop one of your cards, while also then generating advantage by being able to go into a level 8 synchro monster is pretty nice. However, because of the limitation in Master Duel, I'm going to put it in only A tier. While it does have an S tier effect, I think it is very... I don't want to say situational, because there are a lot of times where you can play it and it's very, very strong, just overall in general. And I'm also not talking about any meta in particular, just in general. So right now, it's not as good, but it's still very good, and even I still play it. Look, Maxi exists, we have to put Ash in S tier. Alistair the Invoker is a garbage hand trap. Really good card, terrible hand trap. Just an absolutely garbage hand trap. Do you want to know why? All it does is boost one singular fusion monster by 1,000 attack and defense. Terrible. Not even really situational. Just bad. As a hand trap. I've never seen this card in my life, and I refuse to read it. Fiendes, also bad. It's only useful in one deck. Droll and Lockbird is an A-tier deck, or is an A-tier card. However, similar in nature to Gamma, if Droll and Lockbird is a card that is currently seeing play in a meta, you know there is a problem with said meta. However, it's very strong. I believe this is Contact C? It's one of the C cards. Basically, every single one of the C cards, except for the Cockroach, or I should say, except for Maximum C, they're all just situational. None of them are exceptionally terrible. Some of them are bad, but none of them are, like, terrible, except for this one. This one actually is just bad. I'm still going to put it in situational. Contacting, confronting, flying, see, all of them are just kind of meh. They're just situational. They come up occasionally. They're fine side deck cards, etc., etc. Why is Kurikara on here? Kurikara is not a hand trap. That's just not the case. Just not a hand trap. Just actively not a hand trap. There you go. Is Imperm on here? Excuse me, what? Why is Imperm... Oh, no, Maxi is on here. Oh. Oh. I'm just blind. What color should we make this? Black, like my soul. Cool. Also not a hand trap. Who is telling you that this is a hand trap? Also, where is Imperm? I'm going to act like this one's Imperm. It's not, but I'm going to act like it is. Imperm, S tier. I mean, yeah, Imperm is literally one of the best cards ever printed. Why? One, it's not a monster. It's so much easier to deal with monsters, mostly due to the fact that things like Called By exist, but also on top of that because of a myriad of other reasons. However, on top of that, it also is in a trap, so that you can actually set it and utilize it on the opponent's turn. And since, again, it's not a monster, it's harder to deal with. On top of all of that other stuff, it's one of the best effects to have. Just targeted effect negation, very good. So yeah, there you go. No material is actively bad. Just it's not worth it. You have to control no cards. You have to have your opponent has to like summon a monster, like special summon a monster, and then you can make it so that they can't use it as material for an extra deck monster. So bad. Ghost Mourner and Moonlit Chill is pretty decent, all things considered. It's like an Effect Veiler or an Imperm, just kind of worse. However, if you need a lot of targeted effect negation, or more specifically, effect negation for specifically monsters special summoned from the extra, it tends to be a lot better, right? Because it technically doesn't target. It does mean it can like play around things that would have target protection. I think it doesn't target. I think it's when it's summoned. So like it's similar in nature to Infip and to Veiler. So there's that. This is not a hand trap. This one is. This one is extremely situational. So much so that it's just bad. Yeah, turns out if you have to pitch another fairy to activate this card, it's just not really worth it. A lot of people I saw once Herald of Orange Light was limited to 1, they started playing it in tier, being like, oh my gosh, I can negate a tier card, or, you know, I can negate a spell card, and it's still good, right? And then people realized very quickly that negating a spell card just isn't nearly as advantageous as negating a monster effect with another fairy. So it just wasn't really worth it, and never really has been. Also just not hand trap. Havness is situational. Look, if it's in tier, it's good. If it's not in tier, don't play this card. It's that simple. It's like the definition of situational. Same with Stovey Torby. Again, is Chandelier on here? Like, what is happening? What are these cards? Again, obviously I didn't make this. Kuklok. Miscellaneousaurus. Chandelier. What is happening? You know what? Fuck it. I'm just not rating these. It's not worth it. They're not real. Trap Eater, here's the thing. I want to put it in F tier. However, it is very specifically good. In very situational areas. If you need a way to basically Curry Kara trap cards without triggering effects or without activating anything like that, Trap Eater is pretty good. However, technically not a hand trap. It's more like a kaiju for trap cards. It's not something that you activate to stop trap cards or like interact with your opponent in that same way. It's more of like a kaiju. And to me, that's not really a hand trap. Yes, you could argue that it is a hand trap, but really it's more of just Curry Kara. But for traps, which is very funny and definitely a thing that you could do. Not a hand trap, but okay. Moving on, we have ourselves the Bestials. Now, obviously, Bestials are situational for the most part. However, both Magnemite and Druisworm are good enough on their own because of the fact that there are so many decks that play Lights and Darks that the advantage that you can generate by having these two cards, even within your own deck, to then just get additional bodies onto your side of the field is pretty good. However, Saronir specifically is very situational. Oftentimes you're not going to be, along with Baldrake, these are oftentimes mostly going to be played if you already are in a meta that specifically requires Lights and Darks to be banished from the graveyard, like for example against Tyr, and or you are playing a very centralized deck that kind of centers around the Bestials, like for example Dragon Link. So again, they're situational, they're not bad, they're just situational. They're not necessarily in just like a generically good card. This card is bad. It just stops battle damage, or it doesn't even stop battle damage, it just it special summons itself and regains your life points, which is like, hey, that's decent in Duel Links, but alas, in Master Duel, not great. Battle Fader is just like a decently good hand trap, honestly. I know it sounds weird, but like being able to stop an entire battle phase is pretty good. And on top of that, you get a monster. Next up, we're going to talk about every single one of the The Psyframes? Honestly, this is the same card. How did I miss this? Also, DD Crow is on here twice. Also, so is this one. It's fine. Honestly, they're not bad, but similarly, they're very situational. 99.99% of the time, you're not going to want to play these. But in dedicated Psyframe strategies, or in strategies that you very specifically have a card or like sets of cards that you need to deal with, it's not bad. But for the most part, they're just bad. And also Psyframe is also bad. So this is just bad. Not a hand trap. Is Chaos Hunter technically a hand trap? I don't know. This one's very, very, very situational, but when it works, it's very good. Basically, if you have a way to stop your opponent from banishing cards, if you need a way to stop your opponent from banishing cards, and they specifically special summon, which only really happens in, like, Runic, this card's pretty okay. Because it basically allows you to special summon the monster, and then stop your opponent from banishing cards so they can't actually utilize the other effect of the Runic cards, so they can't really interact with you, because if they tried to interact with you, they'd have to banish cards, and since they can't banish cards, they can't actually interact with you. However, they could also just, like, generate more advantage and potentially see, like, a floodgate or something like that, like a skill drain. But situational, very much so. If the meta becomes more reliant on banishing, it's not bad. This one is also very situational. I believe it's basically Effect Veiler, but as a ritual monster, kind of. Not quite the same, but kind of. And this is why it's more situational. It's more of a dead card. Because it is a ritual, and because it's not as useful. It's similar in nature. I think it's closer to, like, Ghost Mourner. However, what it can do is it's easier to search. Because of the fact that you can dump things from the extra deck to the graveyard that can search with Herald of Arclight, as well as you can utilize pre-prep to also search this out in case you already had something else. There are a myriad of ways to actually search this, which makes it a little better. Next up we have, of course, the Winter Cherries. Winter Cherries is, again, situational, mostly due to the fact that as a card, it basically is only useful if you're playing other decks that are also utilizing an extra deck monster. Like, for example, Elf right now in Master Duel is basically seeing play in more or less every deck. So that's something that you could utilize, banish your own Elf if you don't need it to then interact with your opponent and prevent them from using Elf. But honestly, for the most part, it's mostly used in tier 0 metas where you can just banish your opponent's copies of whatever it may be. So, yeah, that's pretty good. Next up we have Skullmeister. Skullmeister is a pretty decent card. Being able to stop something in the graveyard from activating is good. Nibiru. This is not a card. Don't know what I did. Hold on. What are all of these cards? Oh, I know this one. It's just actively ass. It's just so bad. Sorry. I skipped a whole bunch. Nibiru. Nibiru is one of the cards that actually keeps combo decks in check and is one of the reasons why you can actively play like Maxi and have a threat, right? Nibiru is kind of crazy. I don't really know what else to say. Just being able to Nibiru your opponent is pretty strong. And a lot of decks wants to summon 5 or more times, or needs to summon 5 or more times to OTK you. So being able to go like, okay, you have 5 summons, put up a negate or die, is pretty nice. I have no idea what this one is. Ghost Bell. Ghost Bell is also just a decently good card. Turns out being able to stop things that activate in the graveyard, not activate, but would interact with the graveyard is pretty good. Lancia is just situational. Imagine Chaos Hunter, but like more situational, or I guess less situational because you don't have to discard a card and you don't have to special summon a monster. So there's that. This card, I believe, banishes just 2 lights from the graveyard, which is just not good because the Bestials now exist. So, oops. Multi-Figure is not a hand trap. Neither is a Ruru. Neither is whatever this is. DD Crow. DD Crow is good. I mean, Bestials are better, but DD Crows is still good because it can hit anything. So if your opponent were to send to the graveyard a spell or trap that they wanted to activate, you could just get rid of it. Next up, we have ourselves Ghost Ogre. Ghost Ogre is also pretty good. Less situational than like the Bestials, which honestly I might no. But yeah, overall being able to pop a card is pretty effective. This card is very situational. If you are playing a fairy-centric deck, sure, Herald of Orange Light is pretty good. Being able to stop your opponent's other hand traps, like for example an Ash Blossom, a Maxi, a Nibiru, etc., is pretty nice. However, if you're not playing a fairy deck, this card is absolutely useless. Wow. I want to put this in situational, but let's be honest, Dimension Shifter, if you can play it, is absolutely insane and is almost a game-winning card by itself. Similar in nature to Maxi, however, you do have to play it in very specific decks. But again, if you can, it's so unbelievably good. I don't even want to put it in situational because it's just blanketly good. Okay, this one's technically a hand trap, but it's really bad. Mercurier is just playable in one deck. And that's it. I think the rest of these just don't matter. Oh, okay. Sorry. Mad Hacker is specifically good in the NR format, and that's kind of it. So I gotta put it up here. But then, that's what this is. If you didn't know, this is Mad Hacker. I'm just gonna take it off the list. But then we have Iris Sword Soul, which is just bad. It's just a bad hand trap. It's just a bad hand trap. Do you want to know why? Because it specifically requires a card to already be negated to do anything. I don't know why it's that way, but it basically doesn't do anything by itself. You need another card to do something with it, which is just not really worth it. Anyway, yeah, that's going to be it for this list. I hope that you guys did indeed enjoy. If you did, I like it very much, so appreciate it. And if you want to check out more content like this, as well as more Yu-Gi-Oh!, then just be sure to subscribe. And really thank you guys so much for watching, and remember to always stay frosty. Bye-bye. Shout out to the Frost Guard, my members. Thank you guys so much for the support, and I hope you enjoy the content.